Hi there guys, in today's video I'd like to discuss the division bell. Hi there guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if this is your first time. In today's video I'd like to discuss Pink Floyd's The Division Bell, which 2 days ago celebrated its 31st birthday. But what do I think of this album, and do I think it stood the test of time? Before we discuss my thoughts and feelings on this album, I'd like to look back on a very brief potted history of this album and what it means to me. Pink Floyd started writing The Division Bell, I believe, in January 1993. They finished recording it in around about December, January 94. It was released on the 28th of March 94. Around about the same time that the tour started, the what is now known as the Pulse Tour, but actually was the Division Bell Tour. The first track I heard from the Division Bell, it was totally by chance. I was on my way back from a gig one night. At that time I was still playing quite a lot, and it must have been a Saturday night. I was in my car probably about 11 o'clock at night, travelling back home. I was actually listening to Virgin Radio, and it was the Nicky Campbell show on Virgin Radio, so it was either a Friday or a Saturday night. I can't remember what night it was, whatever night that show was on. And I remember hearing Keep Talking on the Nicky Campbell show, and that was the time when I first heard a track off the Division Bell. He didn't actually announce it as a Pink Floyd song until at the end of the song, and when it got to the end, as the song was progressing, I knew it was Pink Floyd. You could tell it was Pink Floyd just from listening to it. And when it got to the end, and he said, that's a track called Keep Talking from Pink Floyd's new forthcoming album, The Division Bell, I was beside myself, because a massive Pink Floyd fan, and that was the first I'd heard that there was a new album coming. Long story short, the day the album was released, I was at work, and I went out that day at my lunch break and bought it on CD, and that came with the I think it was braille down the grey spine of the CD case. It had a braille down there so that it had the Division Bell in braille, and that was fantastic. I then bought it on vinyl, even though I didn't have a record player at the time. I had 2 copies of it on vinyl. I had a UK first pressing on vinyl, and then a couple of 3 months later I bought a blue vinyl US import on the Columbia label, again, which remained unplayed essentially until I sold it in the early 2000s. I was a huge Pink Floyd fan, so I just used to collect anything and everything to do with the band at that time. Now, I must say that the recent reissues of the Division Bell, of which this is one, is a double album. It runs at 33 RPM, but it is cut over 4 sides. The original album was a single album cut by Doug Sachs at the Mastering Lab in America. It was a single album, not a double. I do still wish I had that. I'm still seriously thinking about replacing my old UK first pressing. When I get round to it, I probably will do that. The blue vinyl version on Columbia goes for quite a bit of money now, from what I can see, £150–200 at the time of filming. Wish I still had that. I think I ended up selling that for about 20 quid at a boot sale, mug that I was. But what do I think of the Division Bell? Well, I do believe it was a true return to form for the band. It's no secret that the Momentary Lapse of Reason was, in essence, a David Gilmour solo album project that turned into a Pink Floyd project. The majority of that album had already been recorded by the time Rick Wright and Nick Mason got involved. Hence the excessive use of drum machines on that album. I think Nick Mason played very little in the way of drums on that album. He did help with sound effects and things like that. And Rick Wright had minimal input on that album. But with this album, it was more of a group effort. They had a voting system, I gather, where they could vote marks out of 10 for different songs so that they could decide which ones were going to be vetoed off the album, because they ended up with quite a few pieces of music for this record when they were writing it. And famously, Rick Wright gave all of his songs 10 out of 10 and all of the others 0. So that was not going to work. So, but what do I think of this album? Well, what I've got to do is I've got to go back on a previous video that I did a year or so ago, where I discussed the best to worst albums, or the worst to best albums. And I did say, when I discussed the Division Bell, the one thing that I don't really get or understand or really appreciate maybe is Polly Samson's lyric writing. I never have done. She's not a Brian Wilson. She's definitely not a Roger Waters. Love him or hate him, and we're not going to get into the issues here with Roger Waters, there is no denying his lyric writing is on a different level to Polly Samson's, and indeed David Gilmour's, and I think even David Gilmour would admit that. You know, the man was responsible for writing Wish You Were Here, he was responsible for writing Dark Side of the Moon, he's responsible for Animals, The Wall. His output has been excellent through the years. His last album, Is This the Life That We Really Want, I think it was called. I have got that. Again, great lyrics, scathing lyrics in parts. He doesn't like Trump, and that really comes through on that record. He's still not scared of speaking his mind, and I do respect Roger for that, but I don't, you know, I'm not going to get into the politics of Roger Waters here, but I just, from a musical perspective, I think Roger Waters is great. However, when we get to the Division Bell, we have got a collection of songs here which I think are, some are excellent, some are fair to middling, and there's one or two which are, I think, turkeys, which I shall discuss now. Cluster 1 is a classic Pink Floyd intro. What would a Pink Floyd album be without an instrumental intro? They started that with Wish You Were Here, and Dark Side of the Moon you had Speak to Me, which was like a semi-instrumental intro, a sound effect intro. With Momentary Lapse of Reason you had Signs of Life, that opened the album, another instrumental, and it was only natural that they would copy themselves and do it again. I do find it a little bit predictable, if I'm honest, now. I'm glad, to be fair, I'm glad Division Bell was their last album. I think if they'd done an album after the Division Bell, it would have been like flogging a dead horse, if you want my honest opinion. Yeah, Cluster 1 is a good instrumental intro written by Gilmour and Richard Wright. Lasts roughly 6 minutes long. Quite a nice piece of music, to be fair, which leads into What Do You Want From Me, which I think is a fantastic record. It's a great, a fantastic song rather. It's a great feel to it. Brilliant backing vocals, and David Gilmour's guitar on that track is fantastic. Then we get to track 3, which is Poles Apart. Co-written between David Gilmour, Polly Samson and Nick Laird-Clowes. Music was written by David Gilmour in total. Nick Laird-Clowes' involvement in this, I think, saved it from some issues that Polly probably would have put in. can you tell I'm not really a fan of Polly Sampson's lyric writing? It's a good song. I like the melody. I think it's a good track. It's an average track. Yeah, it's an average track. I don't think it's groundbreaking, but I enjoy listening to it. Marooned is a fantastic instrumental where David Gilmour uses a Digitech whammy pedal, which when you push the pedal down, the note goes up on the guitar, goes up a full octave. So, you know, that's really the way he's done this, really clever use of that effect pedal. I don't think he'd performed it an awful lot on the Division Bell tour. Certainly it wasn't on the Pulse album. We then get on to A Great Day for Freedom, which was written about the fall of the Berlin Wall. It's a good song. It's got a good sentiment, and it's an okay song. It's not one of my favourites on the album. If I'm going to skip a track, that's the one I normally skip. Along with the next one, Wearing the Inside Out, written by Richard Wright, or actually written by Anthony Moore, music by Richard Wright. I'm not a fan of this track, I'm afraid. I'm sorry, Rick. I did say that in my previous video. I don't think it's a top drawer Rick Wright. I really don't. Now, I really do like Rick's voice. I like all of his early Floyd stuff that he did. Summer of '68, etc. Stuff like that. I love Rick Wright's voice. The Wet Dream album's fantastic. Really good album. But Wearing the Inside Out is, to me, a little bit forgetful, I'm afraid. Take It Back brings back lots of memories for me, because this was the period when I was just starting off in a Pink Floyd tribute band, and we was lucky enough to be rehearsing material at the time for a few shows that we were going to do at the Thameside Theatre in Grays, and it was around about the time of the release of the Division Bell, so it was only natural that we was going to put a few tracks from the Division Bell in the set, and Take It Back was one of them. I remember programming all of my guitar effects to get that echoey intro, and I remember performing it, and it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I do like this track, even though Polly Sampson had some input on it. I don't think the song suffers for it. Nick Laird-Close again was involved in it from a lyrical perspective. Bob Ezrin was also involved in the music. I think Take It Back is a good, solid Pink Floyd rock song, if you like. We then get Coming Back to Life. This is another track that we did in my Pink Floyd tribute band back in 1994. Coming Back to Life was a good, interesting track to perform live. We sampled the EBow intro. David Gilmour, that intro is an EBow on a Gibson J200 guitar on the strings, recorded through an effects processor, and we actually sampled that for our performance, so it sounded exactly like the record. I really like Coming Back to Life. I think it's one of the few times David Gilmour's written some great lyrics, and it's a really good song. Lost for Words is another track that I think is a bit forgetful. It's okay, they performed it a couple of times, I think, on the tour. It's not one of my favourite tracks on the album. Again, it's a mediocre song, in my opinion. Then we get to High Hopes. Now, High Hopes is a fantastic song. When I first heard it, I didn't really appreciate it, I don't think, when I first heard it, when I first bought it back in '94. But over the years, and I think it's probably because of the Pulse version, when they released the Pulse album the following year in the end of '94, '95, when they released Pulse, and I heard the live version, I actually prefer the live version to the studio version of High Hopes. Why? Because I really like the backing vocals on the guitar, the slide solo at the end, and on that last verse. Those backing vocals are absolutely fantastic, and they really help the song. They should have had that sort of thing on the studio track, but they weren't there. The backing vocals that they perform on the Pulse live version, that was all created by Sam Brown, apparently at rehearsal, and she sort of choreographed that vocal section on backing for that track. I loved the song High Hopes. It's really a good song. Always wanted to perform it live in my Floyd band. We never ever got round to doing it for some reason. I don't know why. So with all that said, what do I think of the Division Bell? Well, the Division Bell to me is a good album. It's a return to form. It was recorded really, really well. It was mastered really well by Doug Sachs, and I believe, although don't hold me to this, I believe the original pressing was cut from tape as well. I need to do a bit of research on that, because there's very little in the way of explanation on how it was recorded. It was recorded in '94. That was sort of in the middle of people switching over to digital totally. There's a high possibility it could have been recorded on tape. I like to think so, but either way it still sounds really good. Anyway, I'd like to get an original first pressing and compare it to this. This was mastered from a digital transfer, I guess, across 2 records, so I'm expecting this to sound better than an original, but I will get an original, and I'll do another shootout video in the future for that. And that is my happy birthday to the Division Bell video. What do you think of the Division Bell? Did you buy it when it first came out? What are your thoughts and memories on the Division Bell tour? Did you go? I was there in Earl's Court, and still one of the best gigs I've ever been to. So with that said, I'll wish you goodbye. Hit like and subscribe below. It really does help the channel grow, and I shall see you in the next video. Cheers, bye bye.